This is TWiT. Amazon has announced it's going to buy iRobot, the makers of the Roomba vacuum cleaner, for $1.7 billion. I don't, if there's going to be any regulatory pushback on this, it's going to have to be more about privacy and data, because I don't think this means they'll own the tiny little market for automated vacuums, will they, Stacey? There are other companies.
This is an antitrust. Let me rephrase this. This, under Lena Khan's views of antitrust, and she is the current head of the FTC, this could, I don't think it would be stopped on this.
On what grounds?
So on the grounds that Amazon is going to take a develop, but
there are a lot of companies that make Shark makes one.
Not on the vacuums. So it's not on the physical devices. It's around iRobot's plans to do an OS, a cohesive OS for the smart home. And they called it their Robot OS.
And I didn't even know about this. This is why we love Stacey.
I did an article. Did you see my article?
No.
Did not.
Oh, you should go to
rushing to Stacey on IoT right now.
Has an excellent headline, if I do say so
Maps,
myself.
mops, and matter. Why Amazon wants iRobot. So tell us.
Alliteration. We adore alliteration.
I couldn't help it.
So it's not going to be halted on the grounds that Amazon's going to swoop up the robot vacuum market.
No.
There's enough competition that that's not the case.
It is not robot vacuums. So the two biggest moral panic, as Jeff would say, things were privacy. And in my story, I actually include a map of my home. So you can see what Roomba knows about my house if you're so inclined.
It knows you have a couch in the living room.
It does. And it knows all those weird hatch marks or rugs. It knows where I have rugs.
Oh, that's interesting.
It knows the names of...
So you've got a carpeted master bedroom, partial in the office. So you don't consider this an invasion of privacy? Obviously not. You put it on the internet.
I was going to say, I put it on the internet.
Mm-hmm. I am impressed by the size of your laundry room, which is actually bigger than your kitchen.
Yeah. Wow.
It's like a mud room laundry. It's everything. That door leads out to the garage.
Combo.
All right. It's like the catch-all when you walk in. And in Seattle, good Lord.
How did you get this out of your Roomba? You're able to download your map?
I did a screenshot of the app, and then
Oh, the app tells you this. Okay.
Yeah, the app shows you. Anyway, what were you talking about? Oh,
Robot OS.
So Robot OS is something that iRobot, it's their next generation operating system. And they started talking about it earlier this year. And what it is, it's exactly what everybody's been talking about with the smart home for years. It's once all the things are interoperable, how do we figure out how to not make robots in the smart home, but turn the smart home into a robot, which means giving them context about what people are in the home, what they're trying to do, what other devices can share with other devices about what's happening in the home to actually add value. And that's what Roomba was trying to build with Robot OS. Amazon's also trying to build this. It's not when they talk about ambient intelligence, that's what they're talking about. But iRobot has had a better chance because consumers can say, I don't want anything you're selling, iRobot. I'm not going to buy you because there's plenty of other options. So it was incentivized to work with privacy and data hopes that consumers wanted, right? Same thing with other vendors that are going to share their device data with Robot OS, right? If you're going to work with Robot OS and have your thermostat talk to their smart home OS, you're incentivized to work with them because they're not this huge powerhouse. So if you say, I don't want to share this data, you don't have to. iRobot's still going to try to build something with it, right? And I think what we're losing here is the chance to jointly develop the next level of integration and services for the smart home in a way that is in line with more consumer wants, more participants in the ecosystem wants, as opposed to Amazon dictating what that looks like because it has such enormous market power.
Do you think antitrust law is sufficient to cover this? I mean, that's
That's what, like the FTC. So I think I told y'all a while back how they had asked a bunch of questions about how market power affects salaries, how market power affects innovation.
Oh, yes.
This is very clearly an issue of market power in a deal that could affect innovation. Proving it would be so hard.
Right.
But they're trying to build a model for this. And this is a good deal to actually throw up against that model and see what sticks.
Yeah. You point out that they don't just have Roomba vacuums. They also bought Aeris, which means they now have air purifiers. They have a handheld vacuum. But I think it's an excellent point. By itself, iRobot and its mapping and all these devices don't present a particular invasion of privacy, and they would need to work with third parties. There were a lot of
moral panic and media coverage of it.
Well, there was some concern it was uploading those maps, but now there's and the other part of this is there seems to be a pattern with Amazon. What are Amazon's acquisitions? They buy Ring Doorbell. They buy Eero. Both of these can, be used to map the house to see what's going on. They put cameras and microphones in your house with Amazon Echo. I even had the Amazon Look camera in my closet to review the outfits I wore before I went out of the house. And,
those are ways to perform services for you in your home.
Yes, absolutely. But Amazon becomes more than just an e-commerce company when it has all of these disparate forms of data about you. I don't know what it means.
Nobody really cares what color your pants are or where your coffee table is.
I disagree.
I hate to break it to you.
No, I disagree. I think they do. And I think they might be interested to know that I buy this brand of pants. They might be interested to know that I have a coffee table, but I don't have a side table. I mean, I think there's things.
That's where I think that's the.
So
pardon me, but that's the ego of this is thinking that the world wants to know that much.
I will say there is a potential advantage in this data for shopping. If you think about running something like ARKit on some sort of machine, like being able to pull data about the physical size and location of things in my home into like an AR program. We're not there yet, but you could see, and Roombas do have low-level cameras that see the ceiling, and they have one that sees the floor. So they have, I think they have LiDAR too. It
just seems like one more piece of a larger puzzle.
It does give them
a puzzle of service.
Remember how everyone was like, Astro? And we're like, Astro isn't for sale yet. Astro was their little robot that was like
that was clearly about mapping the house because it did nothing.
Well,
it's also about
brought you drinks.
Robots.
What are you talking about, Leo?
And it also wanted to know the name of every room, so you could say go to the kitchen, as the Roomba does.
And what is it?
And now Amazon has that.
Jeff, I understand, and in fact, I myself have even taken that tack, which is, well, what is the harm? It's at worst, it's going to be selling advertising. But I think we are increasingly learning that this data can be weaponized against us. And we have a story coming up that shows you very dramatically how the data can be used to weaponize against you. And so I think there's a legitimate concern, even if I cannot put my finger on how this would be used nefariously, the fact that all that data is being collected. They just bought One Medical, which is, that's going to give them a huge amount of health information. They bought PillPack, which, they have a pharmacy now. It seems to me this is not just a normal, I'm Walmart and I'm going to sell a lot of stuff kind of growth. That there is definitely interest in data.
Ann's trying to get in. Ann's trying to get in too.
Yeah, I just think there's a line that's been drawn and they've crossed that line. Yeah, you can buy one or two of these different companies that have various services, but after it's just continuing to grow and this piece of pie is getting bigger and bigger and they're getting more and more information about us, I think it's warranted for people to be concerned. I mean, they're going to know every daggone thing. And no, I'm not vain enough to think they give a crap about how many orange T-shirts I have in my closet. But the fact that they could find that out, that's still a little bit interesting,
And Brad Stone actually did a great article.
Hold on. Let Stacey go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he talks about back in 2014, and Brad Stone wrote a book about Amazon.
Two excellent books.
That's right.
Recommend them.
Yeah, they're really good. But he actually did a great article about this deal. He brought up the fact that back in 2014, Jeff Bezos in a shareholders letter said Amazon is searching for the fourth pillar.
Right.
And for Amazon, that was something that was good for consumers and would also become this huge business for it. And it didn't have to do with selling anything online. It could be whatever. It's the fourth pillar they wanted. And Brad makes the case, yes, that Amazon is still looking for that. It's looking at health. He doesn't know if the Roomba deal in smart home really makes sense as the fourth pillar.
So the three pillars are Amazon Marketplace, their third-party sales, Amazon Prime, which is, of course, many things, and Amazon Web Services, which is the number one cloud seller in the world. What's the fourth, he's saying? And Jassy hasn't stopped looking either. I mean, just because Jeff is gone doesn't mean Andy Jassy's not.
Well, Jeff's still around. Stacey, let me ask you the question this way. Well, first, let me just say one thing to Ant. I think fine to ask the question about what they do, but I think that one has to look at it in a regulatory framework of saying you have to start with the harm, the potential harm, to know what you're guarding against. So now let me switch it to Stacey. If you were Lena Khan and you were being expansive and this deal were going to go through, what conditions would you want to put on it?
I would want to put conditions on how Amazon interacts with partners that try to integrate with whatever future smart home OS that Amazon develops.
So that's a really interesting, different take from what we saw in coverage. I like that.
I mean, I also think that we should probably have hardcore real rules about data privacy, which could cover some things that people are worried about. Like, I know you want to think about harms with like Amazon mapping your home, and maybe they're not as easy to figure out right now. But if you think about the sensors that are the Roomba, and you think about a cohesive vision of where people are in the home and what they're doing, giving that information out to law enforcement, for example, is really dicey.
Yeah. So there again, what are the conditions that you want to put on? So you have to think about the potential harms so you can do that. I think.
Those aren't antitrust.
That's true.
To me, those aren't antitrust harms. Those are harms that we need to solve at a macro level across our society related to tech and data, like technology companies grabbing and storing and selling data. Like that's a data marketplace issue. But from an antitrust issue, like what I said, basically, how will this deal affect innovation in this space, given that we're at such a nascent level? And you could say, like when Facebook bought Instagram, that was a kill innovation type deal. It wasn't directly competitive. I think this is that kind of deal.
Yeah, I think you can make a strong case, and I hope they do, that iRobot is better for innovation by its standalone than if it's in a giant company like Amazon. Brad Stone wrote an article a couple of days ago in Bloomberg, what Amazon's Roomba and One Medical deals have in common. This came out August 8th. Data. Well, but there's an interesting quote in here that actually comes from Colin Angle, who's the founder of iRobot. In 2019, at the Remars conference, Amazon's Remars conference, Brad Stone writes, wearing a very Amazonian powered by optimism t-shirt, Angle talked about making autonomous robots, not just vacuum cleaners, but autonomous robots that implicitly understand their environment and can respond to queries and anticipate the needs of their owners. The goal is to turn the house into a robot, he said.
Yes.
Giving it sensors, giving it actuators, giving it the ability to take care of the people who live in the house. And with an appropriate combination of AI, voice understanding, and spatial understanding, this gives Amazon the third part of that. We create a home where you live your life and it just does the right thing. It's a very interesting idea of home automation. Yeah. Instead of a robot standing at the sink doing your dishes, the home is itself the robot with different ways of actuating, and it's all tied together. And so Brad's making the case that there are two possibilities for this fourth pillar. One is healthcare, but he says that's complicated. There's a lot of regulation. The other is home automation. In particular, this vision of a smart home that really is smart. Doesn't just.
But how about another one, Leo?
Yeah.
When I saw this deal, my first thought was, and I hadn't put it in the terms of the pillar, but that this was inside and outside the home, business to consumer and business to business robots. that Amazon could in its factories, in its drones, in its delivery trucks, that a physical robot service structure, as opposed to a data structure, which is Google, or a social structure, which is Facebook and Twitter. Is there a larger robotics industry piece here? Who else is big besides Boston Dynamics? Who else out there is big in robotics?
It's a philosophical thing, because in the early days of computing, we thought, well, the computers would get bigger and bigger and bigger and smarter and smarter and smarter. And what turned out, it was computing at the edge, which was smaller computers everywhere in everything. Right. And I think robotics may turn out to be that. Instead of a smarter, bigger robot, there's little things doing little bits, like a iRobot, Roomba, and all over the
inside
house.
And outside your home. At work.
If you go to the story that I wrote back in when Astro came out, I wrote a story all about how the smart home is a robot, like the whole home is a robot. And again, like Colin Angle was saying, the idea there, and it makes a ton of sense, because I have seen so many demonstrations of robots. When you deal with general purpose, there's no such thing as a good general purpose robot. We're not going to have a Rosie, because robots aren't smart enough. They don't have the physical dexterity we need for all that. So what we will have, if you scroll, there it is. Oh, hey.
The smart home doesn't need a robot.
Fingers on the pulse of
it
everything.
Should be a robot.
Whoops.
Yeah.
I grabbed the wrong one.
And so that's in.
I love this,
Stacey.
That's exactly what we were just saying.
That's really interesting.
And so, and it's cheaper, because you're going to assemble the robot you need, and you need it to talk to, so like
it's
if
robot
you
at the end.
That's why the OS matters so much, to your point, Stacey.
Exactly.
That's why the OS. Otherwise, you can't have interoperability. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck in living in somebody's walled garden. Yeah.
Best explanation yet of what Amazon's up to.
Yeah.
And Brad Stone goes on to say, both the iRobot and One Medical acquisition share a final attribute, an almost breathtaking disregard for the trust busters, particularly head of the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, Lena Khan. He says Jassy probably feels confident that the law's on their side, and so the quest for this fourth pillar justifies the risk.